Hey guys, my Grandmaster coach has praised my play today. So has the computer, saying that I've played with 93% accuracy, making 0 mistakes. I've played with black pieces using the King's Indian defense, and this will be very instructive if you want to learn an opening for black against one d4 or one c4 or one knight f3 to play for a win with black, to play for an attack, to get to the opponent's king. So let's dive into this game. This is round 8 game at Group A of the Yurtayev Memorial in Kyrgyzstan, and I'm playing a Kazakhstani player, Murat Murzin. He is rated around 1870. He's a veteran player, I think 50 plus years old, the third veteran player in this tournament. If you watched the previous recaps, you might have noticed a pattern that I seem to fare well against senior players and seem to do badly against junior talents. Well, I hope to break this vicious circle with the juniors, but let's dive into the game. So this is the opening. This is all standard. With some move transposition, we reach the starting position of the King's Indian defense. So here there are two ways to play for black. One is to go for the e5 and knight c6, and another is what I did, to go for e5 and to develop the knight to d7. Both are perfectly fine. You're welcome to study both of them, but I recently started playing this knight bd7 idea. So there are many ways to play this position for white, but the main line is bishop e3, and here queen e7 is the move. And here white decides to close the center with d5. This is one of the moves, perfectly fine. You should remember that if white plays d5 here, you should strike with c5, which is an attempt to block the queen side. So the ideas here for black is to attack white on the king side by moving the king to h8, then moving the knight to g8, then pushing f5, also trying to trade off the dark squared bishops, because black has put many pawns on the dark squares, so the dark squared bishop is not too impressive, whereas white has put many pawns on light squares, so white will be left with the light squared bishop, which is obviously bad, much worse than black's light squared bishop. So it's a little bit subtle, but this is the plan for black. And to attack also h5, h4, g5, g4, maybe rotate the knights, one to h8, another to, well, let me finish drawing those arrows because it's too confusing. And the plan for white is to push on the queen side, go b4, knight b5, a4, a5, a6 if allowed, rook b1, something like that. So this is standard play for the King's Indian defense. Whoever breaks through on the respective flank first wins, usually. So I have to break through on the king side, he has to break through on the queen side. So what happens next is he goes knight e1, logical move. He wants to rotate here and push b4 and put pressure here. But I go king h8. This is the plan. I want to free this square for my knight to first of all be able to trade off the dark squared bishops, and second of all to push f5, which is a standard pawn break in the King's Indian defense. He goes a3, which is a little bit too slow. Actually, he should have gone knight e3 and b4 in one move, and then a4 in one move, because in the game he played a3 and in several moves he played a4, so he wasted a tempo. But it's not fatal by any means, so he goes b4. This is important to remember here, that you have to go b6 here with black once you encounter b4, because if white takes here, as a rule of thumb, you take back with the b pawn and you leave this structure intact. This is like a barrier that is stopping white's attack on the queen side, because generally if, for example, let's say I take with a knight and sometime in future let's make some nonsensical moves, like I rotate, for example, here, sometimes in future if white gets the opportunity, let's say something like this happens, if white gets the opportunity, let's say I do nothing, white may break through like c5 and even sacrifice a piece for this and get some initiative for this, attacking the queen with the knight, then pushing d6, and white's pieces come into life. Of course, this is a nonsensical variation, not the best moves. I was just showing you what could have happened. So this is why whenever white takes here, you take back with the pawn, and this pawn prevents any c5 nonsense. So this is important to remember. He didn't take here. He went knight d3 first, f5, f3, h5, I'm trying to attack, as I told you, and here a4. Again, you see this is a lost tempo for white, but still white had an extra tempo at the beginning of the game because white goes first, so it's all fine. Here it's important to go a5 to prevent a5 for white. Also, it's important to remember this, because if white goes a5, this might get unpleasant. Then white opens up this a file and starts to break through on the queen side. You don't want to allow that. So a5 is good here, takes, and again my pawns restrict his activity on the queen side, which is nice. But he has this b5 square now, and also if my knight leaves the d7 post, he will have the b6 outpost, well, not outpost, but b6 square, to pressure my d6 pawn. My d6 pawn is the base of the pawn chain here, so this is the most important pawn for me, and I have to do anything within my power to not to lose it, or at least if I lose it, then I have to checkmate white. That's that's the idea. So he goes rook b1, logical. I go bishop h6. I want to trade the bishops, because if he trades, look at this light squared bishop of his. It has no moves, it can move to no square, whereas my light squared bishop will breathe into life, and it will be instrumental in the attack. So it will be much better, because all my pawns, well, many of my pawns are on dark squares, whereas his pawns, almost all of his pawns are on light squares. So this is why trading is not good for him. He draws back. And here I push h4. I am really feeling aggressive here. I want to attack him. I want to push h3, even at the loss of a pawn, to break up his pawn chain. This is the base of his pawn chain, this long connect 4, and I have to break it. So he attacks my pawn, but I push. Here, actually, the best move according to the engine was taken, but this would have given me the f4 outpost for my knight, and probably I could have maneuvered it via h5, for example, or I could have taken here and put pressure on the f file. So my position is fine, but what he did was a little bit worse. He put his pawn on g3, and now this pawn on h3 is very important. It restricts his king, it creates some mating threats. You know, AlphaZero, one of the strongest chess engines ever, pioneered this H pawn advancement. Well, it was not just AlphaZero. For example, Alexander Grishuk, Russian grandmaster, also likes this H pawn attack, but AlphaZero was the one who made it mainstream. So I tried to play like Grishuk or like AlphaZero. Choose your fighter. I put my knight closer to the center. My idea is a little bit subtle, but it's quite logical. I want to go knight. So my knight was on g8 again. I want to go knight f6, knight h7, and then knight g5, and put pressure on the f3 square. For example, once we trade, I can check on f3, and my rook will protect the square. So this is my idea. Knight f6. He drops back. His idea probably is that now I'm attacking the e4 pawn 2 times, and he defends it just 2 times, so his c3 knight is stuck defending this pawn. So he wants to add another defender to the e4 pawn, and now he is ready to go knight b5, which is a standard plan here for white in the King's Indian, to attack my base of the pawn chain again, as I told you. So okay, I drop back, I continue my maneuver, he takes. Well, I really was skeptical about this idea of taking for him, but actually he doesn't have anything else here. He is struggling to find some counterplay of his own. And the computer actually says that first I could have taken and then gone knight h7. That would be even better, disallowing him from taking. But still, what I did was also perfectly fine. So we trade, and here he made a mistake. He should have just waited patiently, done nothing, king h1 is the computer recommendation, sidestepping anything. But he tried to break through with f4. And this is a bad move, because I'm the one playing on the king side. I'm the one who wants to open it up, to advance pawns there. It's not in his interest to open it up. I go e4, and suddenly this pawn, first of all, is a protected passed pawn. In endgames, always I'm better. Also with this pawn restricting the king, in endgames it's also very good. You will see it. Remember this pawn. Pay attention to it. It will play a role. But second of all, this change, if we can compare this position and this position, the long diagonal has opened up, and I am the one who will take it with the bishop and or the queen. And the long diagonal will be very important in this game. So he drops back, and I activate my knight. You remember the idea to activate the knight via g5. Now it's no longer possible because the f-pawn controls the square. So I change the plan, and I go to f6 to overprotect this pawn, to probably jump in via g4 later on. Not now, because he has this bishop here, and his bishop, again, as I told you, is ugly, and I don't want to trade my knight for the bishop. But I want to threaten to go to g4 and keep his bishop eye in the square on this passive square. And you see, most of white's pieces are on the first rank, so this is not a good sign for white. This is a sign of passivity. Computer again finds some equality for white, but only with some only moves, which is very hard. He goes king h1, sidestepping. Actually, this is a mistake, which I immediately use. Here I find a series of moves that I'm really proud of. So first I attack his pawn on c4. I see that he has this weakness, an undefended c4 pawn. He should have protected with the queen and hold on for dear life here, but still I'm much better here. Knight g4, for example. Now he cannot take with the bishop because the bishop cannot jump over the queen, and this knight is great here, and in some variations I can go rook a8 and e3, for example, and I will crash through most likely. But that would be better, would have been better. He chose another move, a logical move, knight b5. Again, we've been discussing this for a long time, that he wants to put the knight here to try to pressure the d6 square, although now he is not really threatening anything because I'm defending the pawn and he cannot add any more attackers here. And here I find another nice move that is given an exclamation point by chess.com's engine, knight b6. I'm putting more pressure on this pawn. And turns out it's really difficult to defend it. So in the game, white went queen c3 and got hit with a nasty piece of tactics, e3. So I will show you all the variations later on, but let's see if there are any other ways to defend here. For example, if white goes bishop b3, trying to protect with the bishop, now I have the g4 square for my knight, and I'm threatening e3. If white goes, for example, bishop e3, trying to block, I can just go here, and whatever white does, for example, queen d2, I can just take, for example, and go first take, and then whatever white takes with, well, here I can even add a4 in, and bishop d4, and I'm crashing through. Next, I'll go e3 once the queen moves, for example, queen d2, or queen a3 is what the computer suggests. But then I can go e3, threaten this check with further mate, queen d3, well, is a defense. For the time being, white is holding on, but still, I can go a3 even, and then my knight can jump in via a4 and c3. This is very bad for white. So, but that would have been a little bit better than what happened in the game. So bishop b3 would be better. In the game, he went queen c3 and got hit with e3. He didn't see this, he told me after the game, but still, nonetheless, it doesn't matter. So here he has to take with the queen. He took with the queen. Because otherwise, if he takes with the bishop, then queen e4 is a fork, and he just loses the rook, and he has no compensation. So he has to take with the queen. Also, if rook e1, I can take. And if he takes the queen, he gets mated. So this is, again, a nice combination. So here he takes with the queen, and I calculated here that I take, He takes and I take. And I thought this is a winning endgame because if he drops back with the bishop to f2 or g1, I have this forking both rooks. And if he doesn't, if he defends the bishop, then I can just take another pawn of his, adding another attacker to e3, and I'm completely crashing through. If he goes, he has to go back now, and I can jump in via d2, for example. Then I can jump into e4, and I'm completely dominating in this position. I'm up a pawn. His pieces are all horrible, and my pawns are marching, and probably I will make a queen very soon. So this is what I calculated. And here, after knight takes c4, he blundered, probably. He, instead of doing what I showed you, which could have prolonged the agony, rook e1, he dropped back with the bishop, forgetting that I have this fork. And here he could have resigned, but he tried to go for some counterplay. And he let me finish the game in style. See the remaining 10 moves. I finished him off in 10 moves. And he gave up, he resigned one move before the checkmate. So can you guess how it happened? Let's see. So he went bishop c2. I took the rook. Now he went knight b3, threatening to take at least back at least the knight. So he's now officially down a rook, but he wants to be down an exchange if he takes the knight. But I don't want to give him my knight. I go c4, attacking his knight. Once the knight leaves the defense of the d2 square, I will escape via d2. So he goes here, I escape, attacking his rook. He attacks me, and I escape back. And now I'm also threatening to take his bishop. He drops back, and I add another knight to the attack. The ponies are jumping, and now I'm threatening to check him, forking the king and the rook. So he has to take here. I take, but he desperately tries to go for some counterplay, knight c7. And this is a good try, because if I he attacks the rook and the bishop, and if I move some logical move like rook a7, then he can jump in with another knight, for example here, and the bishop is attacking the a7 rook. This knight is attacking this rook, and there are some complications. But here I spent like 7 or maybe even, yeah, something like 7 minutes, and I calculated the winning sequence of moves to create either a queen or a checkmate on the board. So I decide to sacrifice the rook, e3. So he has to take, I take, and now I am threatening to fork him, but he can take, and then I'll take, but then this bishop will eye the f1 queen in square, so I will be able to go c3, and he will have to give up his rook for this pawn. So that's why he tries to stop it by attacking the pawn. I check him, and he attacks the pawn, but here, remember I told you to pay attention to this pawn. This is very important, not just for attacking and mating your opponent in middle game, but also for winning in endgame. Rook e8, and turns out he cannot take, because rook e1 will be checkmate. He cannot escape. This is a checkmate. So he cannot take this pawn. He tries to block with his knight, and now can you find the winning combination? Well, it's kind of easy and everything wins here, but my move is the flashiest. Rook takes e6, and he resigned here because if he takes, bishop b7 is a checkmate. My pawn and bishop elegantly create this beautiful construction. So I win this important game. This is the 8th round. So tomorrow I'll play the last round. I will be playing against the tournament leader, a powerful Uzbekistani player, 2100 rated. So let's see how I fare tomorrow. Wish me luck and see you in the next one. Bye bye.